All right, and welcome into the BettingPros College Football Show. Today we flip the script and make our Week 9 college football early picks and line movement predictions. I'm your host, Seth Woolcock, learning as I go, because sometimes you can trust the numbers, you can trust your eyes, and you still strike out, but we keep swinging, baby. And I am joined by my friend and colleague who's recovering from a weekend of living inside that YouTube TV 4 box, Scott Bogman. Happy Week 9, Boggs.
Yeah, week 8, for my Longhorns was very depressing. One of the louder bets that I was on as well. But on my best bet show, I did go 5-1 on my picks. That was my best week for my picks. But yeah, super depressed about Texas losing. But they dropped down to 5. There's still like an 80% chance to make the playoff. That's as long as they don't lose to Vanderbilt this weekend, I'll be okay. So recovering from that. But Georgia's a good team. I did say it's possible they won. They just had not been performing like that up until they played Texas. That second half against Alabama was awesome too. But, they whooped Texas on the O-line. And, got some soul searching to do and some changes to make for Texas. So get this one out of the way before the playoff. That's what I'll say.
Agreed with you. We've got an absolutely loaded program for y'all today. We're going to be reacting to Week 8 and the AP rankings movement. And we're also going to give you an early handicap on the biggest games of the Week 9 slate. Thank you to everyone who tunes in each and every week and rides shotgun with us. Win or lose, we appreciate the support greatly. And I want to know in the comments this week, who came through for you in Week 8? Who was your knight in shining armor? For me, it was Mike Gundy and Oklahoma State here. They remembered they have Ollie Gordon in the backfield. They made BYU run up the score to push that over the total on Friday night. Who was your knight in shining armor here in Week 8, Boggs?
Yeah, that one was huge. I had that over as well, and that one cashed pretty early. But, Army smashed. The Navy Charlotte over smashed. So, like I said, my picks were pretty good.
Yeah.
Well, my heart was broken by Texas.
Yeah. So. Service Academy's coming in for Boggs. I like that.
Yeah, and they're both ranked with
sir.
Vandy. So I'm sure you saw the hang it in the Louvre. With all those teams ranked right now. So they keep telling me the regular season doesn't matter, but it feels like it matters a lot. So
I agree. And before we jump in, I want to remind you, if you want a chance to win a signed Kyren Williams Los Angeles Rams jersey for free, courtesy of our friends over at pristineauction.com, all you have to do is subscribe to the BettingPros YouTube channel right now. Drop a comment below on any of our videos, and that's it. We will be announcing a winner right here on the channel, so make sure you turn on those notifications so you can be alerted when new videos are up and to claim your prize. Looking at some of the Week 8 games, Tennessee, they upset Alabama. We were wrong on that one as well, 24-17 for the Volunteers. Carson Beck's 3 interceptions could not stop Georgia from beating Texas 30-15. Kirk Cignetti says, hold my beer once again as IU beats Nebraska 56-7.
That one got ugly fast.
Oh, yeah. And Brady Cook does the actual Undertaker gif and returns from the hospital to lead Missouri 21-17 over Auburn. What stood out to you the most here?
I think Brady Cook returning like a WWE guy, like you just said, was pretty cool to see. But, Indiana just announced, we're here. We're not going away. And I think the rest of the Big Ten was like, whoa, that looks dangerous. But Curtis Work out for at least this game.
Yes.
We'll see if that continues. Lost his whole thumbnail, which is ugly. And, oh, God, I don't like that at all. But, the rest of that team, they put it on Nebraska. We saw Matt Rule get like a 15-yarder at the end.
Yeah.
Because he was screaming at everybody. That was nasty work from Indiana. They really put it on Nebraska.
And before we get to the picks here for Week 9, I just want to check in on some of the conference standings here. Clemson and Miami, they sit atop the ACC. Not a total shocker there. BYU and Iowa State, they have now taken control of the Big 12.
Like we all predicted.
Right. In the Big 10, a little more predictable. Penn State, Oregon at the top of that conference there, but Indiana still in the mix as well. And yes, in the SEC, Texas A&M and LSU now lead the SEC standings. Any futures you're currently considering based off these current standings here? I took BYU last week 5-1 to win the Big 12. I was trying to make good on my Oklahoma State Big 12 bet that I made earlier this season. So anything you're kind of currently considering in the futures market here, looking at these conference standings?
I think BYU is the one. I think, like you said, still a tough road to hoe. I think there's still people that are not believing in BYU and think they're going to drop a couple games here coming up. But that team looks good. You know, they're the Big 12 Indiana. So they've looked strong so far. I think that's a good bet, Seth.
Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and move forward to the Week 9 action where it starts up in the Berg, where the 6-0 Pitt Panthers host the 5-1 Syracuse Orange in an ACC Thursday night banger. Pitt is favored by 5.5, and we have a 60.5 point total. Both these teams are currently 5-1 against the spread, with significant wins for Syracuse coming by way of Georgia Tech and UNLV. Pitt, meanwhile, they won the backyard brawl. They also beat a solid Cincy team and Cal the last time we saw them. Pitt is 8-2 in the last 10 matchups against Syracuse, but the Orange did win straight up last year, 28-13. Where do we expect the line movement to happen here, if anywhere, in this game between Kyle McCord and Eli Holstein and two of the top 12 passing offenses in the nation, Boggs?
Well, it's already moved up a point from last night, and I make my notes pretty late, Seth. And this line is already opened up by a point in Pittsburgh's favor, so it went from -4.5 to -5.5. So I think if you want Pitt, you better get it fast, right? But if you're thinking about Syracuse, just wait and get more points later in the week. So I do think the line shifts towards Pitt, but in this game, Syracuse has played 4 P4 games. They've all been one-score games. I like Pitt coming off a bye, and I don't think they're going to look past Syracuse because, like you said, Syracuse got them last year. And Pittsburgh, there can be weather, right? So as long as there isn't crazy wind on Saturday, and Thursday, and I looked at the forecast, I don't see anything like that. I like the over here. These offenses are clicking right now. Averaging 33.6 for Syracuse, 40.8, top 10 in scoring for Pitt. Both passing offenses are top 12 in the country. I like a lot of offense in this game, and since Syracuse has been playing these games close and Pitt can play games close, I like the over here. I think that it's a high total, but that's my favorite play in this one.
A lot of these Friday night, Thursday night games, they tend to go over the total as well. So I like that call. And yeah, I just can't pick a side here in this one. Like, Syracuse has looked really decent, and Pitt's kind of been one of the big storylines out of the ACC there. So is there a number that you could maybe see that would maybe get you on the Orange, or are you kind of just avoiding this line as a whole here?
No, I think if this gets out over like 7.5, something like that, I definitely take Syracuse. I do think because they can score with anybody, I feel like. So I think if it gets out to there and you're getting more than a touchdown, I'll definitely take Syracuse.
Okay. In Las Vegas on Friday night, we have a huge Mountain West showdown between the 17th ranked Boise State Broncos, who are favored by 2.5 points over the 6-1 UNLV Rebels. These are two of the top 5 scoring offenses in the nation, which is probably why this total is set at a hefty 65.5 points. Heisman favorite Ashton Jeanty has led the Boise State Broncos to a 5-0-1 record against the spread, and he's 4-2 to the over as well. UNLV, amid all the controversy, they're still 4-2 against the spread, 4-2 to the over as well. Boise State is 4-0 all-time against Las Vegas here. That includes a 44-20 win last year. Is 2.5 points enough here, Bogman, for the Heisman hopeful and his team?
I don't think so. I think I like Boise State. This is already, like, I think the best you could get it last night was 3, and now it's 2.5. So in some spots. So I think I would take Boise State pretty quickly here. But again, my favorite play in this game is going to be the over, because I think the only way UNLV can really hold with Boise State in this game is by making them pass. And how do you make them pass? You have to get points on the board, get up to make them play from behind and not let them run Jeanty the whole game. So, because, I mean, listen, UNLV has been good against the run so far this year. Their rushing defense is 23rd, 105.7 points per game. But Oregon gave up 193 yards and 3 touchdowns to JT on the ground. So I just think that JT is going to be able to run against anybody, specifically UNLV here. I think, another huge game for him. Of course, how could you doubt that? But I like the over. I like both these teams to play, and UNLV's only real strategy to me is outscore Boise State, make them pass the ball. So I think we're going to see a lot of points in this one.
Minus 132 on the money line for Boise State. I think that's probably how I'll attack this, just to, save myself a little heartbreak, I think, on Friday night. But I think whether you want to get invested with the money line there or the 2.5-point spread with Boise State, I think that's a good idea. Excited to see what Terrell has to say on Wednesday, because he's always after the Friday night underdogs there. But, this is a good Boise State team, man. Very good team.
Yeah. One of the better G5 teams in the country for sure.
Moving into the noon slate and the host of the big noon kickoff, it's number 4 Ohio State, who's laying 24.5 points on the Nebraska Cornhuskers here. We haven't seen this Ohio State team since they took the field and were upended 32-31 in Eugene, Oregon. The Buckeyes are still second in total defense, 6th in total offense as well, but they are just 3-3 against the spread, 4-2 to the over this season. The Cornhuskers are coming off an embarrassing 56-7 loss in Bloomington. Dylan Raiola finally looked like the true freshman he is. He threw 3 interceptions in that game. Matt Roll's men now move to 5-2 straight up and against the spread, and are just 2-5 to the over as well. Where do you think we see this 24.5 point line move if we do, Bogman?
Yeah, I think right now it's the money and cash are just slightly, or the cash and tickets are just slightly on the Nebraska side, because this line is so huge. And I know Nebraska just got embarrassed, right? That was a bad game against Indiana, but I see this game in the neighborhood of like 35-14 in Ohio State's favor. Nebraska should bow up after being embarrassed a little bit last week. I think they're better than what they showed. Ohio State's coming off a bye, which is not great for Nebraska, but they do have that look-ahead spot to your Penn State Nittany Lions next week. So we have a little bit of that. We also had the pull-off factor for Ohio State, right? They pulled off against Michigan State. They kind of, screwed around in the first half against Iowa and only scored 7 points. So that, they had their full game when they got up to play Oregon, and they still lost that game by a point. So I like Nebraska plus the points. I think with the early money coming in on Nebraska, we might want to get this now. I don't want to touch the total because Ohio State is in a look-ahead spot. And again, they pulled off against Michigan State. They kind of screwed around with Iowa in the first half. I just remember those games, and this isn't a team that has taken many opponents seriously, and Nebraska, after being embarrassed, is probably not going to be very respected going into this game. So I'll take Nebraska plus the points. I think it's just too many.
Yeah, I think that's a sharp play. Ohio State is 7-1 all-time against Nebraska. However, the Cornhuskers did cover last year as 14.5-point dogs. So, yeah, maybe 24.5, 25.5, even some places already. Might be too many points. So, I like that call from you there, man. And let's move to the host of College Game Day for the first time since 2017, Bloomington, Indiana, where the 13th ranked and undefeated against the spread Hoosiers face the 4-3 Washington Huskies. I'll tell you what, man, Hoosier Fever, Sig Signetti, as the internet is calling him, is sweeping the nation, as this team's just a cashing machine. It doesn't matter if you've bet them on the money line, against the spread, or the over. They have not lost, but you did mention it earlier. We do have transfer quarterback Curtis Rourke, who is dealing with a thumb injury here. He's been spectacular this season. This leaves Taven Jackson to lead the number 1 scoring offense in the nation against the Huskies' number 1 ranked passing defense. So, interesting matchup here. Washington overall is just 2-5 against the spread. They are 1-5 to the over as well. They did just suffer a disappointing 40-16 loss to Iowa last time out. Do they have enough to cover here as 6.5-point dogs against Coach Sig and the boys? And is this the lowest number we're going to see this week, you think?
This is a complicated game, right? Because we have Washington not looking like themselves, but they're rested up. They're coming off a bye. We just saw Indiana lose their starting quarterback, right? So this game is a little bit up in the air. But for me, the Indiana train is rolling here, and I'm going to ride it until the wheels fall off. We did see Taven Jackson go 7 for 8, 91 yards, and 2 touchdowns in relief. That was against a Nebraska team that had quit. So I'm not taking that at face value.
Is he a dog? Is he supposed to be? Is he a highly touted recruit here?
4-star recruit, number 12 overall.
Okay.
At his position at quarterback in 2020, 237 overall, but number 12 at QB. And he came from a stellar school in Tennessee. So I think I've just not been impressed with what Washington has done this season. It seems like every time they've been tested, they've lost, outside of Michigan, which may not be a test after we saw what they have done.
Rogers is trash too, I think, honestly.
Yeah. Well, they've lost the Apple Cup. They lost the 2 road games at Rutgers and at Iowa. Their 4 wins are Weber State, Eastern Michigan, Northwestern, and Michigan. And all 4 of those wins have been at home. So for me, I don't want to mess with the total because I don't know what we're getting with Taven Jackson, right? But I just I'm riding this Indiana train until the wheels fall off. So I do think that the earlier you get this, the better, because I think the money is going to just open up towards Indiana. So I go ahead and take it now. But yeah, I mean, I'm on anything less than 10. I'm going to be on Indiana.
Okay, let's now go to MetLife Stadium, where we have an all-ranked affair between the 12th-ranked Fighting Irish, favored by 11.5 points, against the 24th-ranked Navy Shipmen. Notre Dame has looked good since being upset by NIU in Week 2. They did cover yet again this past week against Georgia Tech. They were without Haynes King as well, though. Navy, meanwhile, they're undefeated straight up and 5-1 against the spread. They've covered in their last 5 straight and hit the over in every single game this season. Their best win, though, is probably against Memphis, where they were 11.5-point dogs in that one. And in true Navy fashion, they're 4th in rushing offense, 125th in passing offense. Will that cut it against Notre Dame's 10th ranked total defense here, Bogman?
I don't think so. It's really hard to know what Navy team you have until they play someone like Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's the difficult thing. But as you said, their only big win was against Memphis. The other FBS teams they've played are a combined 7-21 for Navy.
Wow.
Notre Dame crushed Navy last year. That's such a weird spot, though. It was week 1. It was in Ireland. You can kind of throw that one out the window. And like I said, Navy, they brought back a decent amount of starters, but having Horvath makes this offense wholly and completely different. So they're just a better team this year. But I don't think this is enough points. I don't think 11.5, 12 is going to get it done. I think this one has already slipped a half point towards Notre Dame as well. It was 12 last night. Now you can get it at 11.5. So a little bit of money coming in on Navy here recently, but it's still cash and tickets are on Notre Dame. So I would go ahead and take this one early if you're on the Irish, and I am also going to be on the Irish.
Okay, let's move to Oxford, Mississippi, where the 5-2 Ole Miss Rebels come off their bye week after a heartbreaking loss to LSU to host the Oklahoma Sooners as 19.5-point favorites. Ole Miss, they're currently 5-2 against the spread, also 5-2 to the under. They're led by one of the best wide receivers in the nation, Trey Harris, who has helped carry them to the second best total offense. They will face the Sooners, who are now just 2-5 against the spread and have the 128th ranked total offense. They went back to Jackson Arnold last week after some huge turnovers early in the game from Michael Hawkins Jr. against South Carolina. Oklahoma moves to 2-5 against the spread, 6-1 to the under. Bogman, am I sharp or square, you think, for liking Ole Miss here? And do you think we get a better number later in the week?
Yeah, so I don't like this game at all. I'll say
okay.
This is probably going to be a stay away from me just because, I mean, Ole Miss has been embarrassing, letting LSU come back, that road loss to Kentucky, Kentucky is, especially that Kentucky game, they lost to Vandy in Florida. But Oklahoma is currently the holder of one of the worst offenses in college football.
So bad.
I would put them down with Houston, Northwestern, UCLA. I mean, maybe Florida State is better or is worse, but that's probably it of the guarantees.
Yeah,
I would say. The only game Oklahoma scored 20 points in against a P4 team is the Auburn game, and they had a pick 6 in that one. if I have to pick, I think Ole Miss bounced back against South Carolina. I expect them to come into this game pissed after that loss to LSU, and wanting to pour it on to climb back into the playoff picture. So I like Ole Miss minus the points here. This is a lot though. And OU, still feels like OU can find the offense and figure it out at any point. That defense is really good when they do. So they'll be a good team when that happens. Obviously, coming in at 4-3, having a good season is almost out the window for them. And I do think they lose this game. But I'm probably going to stay away. But if I am picking this game, I would take Ole Miss and lay the points. And this has already opened up a half point. So I guess get Ole Miss now at 20.5.
I was hoping maybe I could get that down to 17 or something maybe later in the week.
Like I said, maybe you can. I don't know which way this one's going to roll. So
okay.
Because honestly, they took down the ticket and cash numbers. So I don't know which way this one is going. I know it was way towards Oklahoma yesterday, but then it opened up a half point towards Ole Miss.
Yeah.
So I'm not really sure which way this one is going to go. If you like Oklahoma, I get it, but I just can't take them with this pathetic offense right now.
Any interest in the under here because that Oklahoma offense is so bad, or do you think because Ole Miss is one of the best offenses in the country, you kind of have to stay away from the total?
Yeah, and I think, this is a team that is not going to let off the gas. And after 2 losses, you have to stay if you want to stay in the playoff picture, because they're one of those that's, if you look at FPI and all that stuff, they're like, whatever it is, 22% to make the playoff now. They need to win big games convincingly and big to get back into this national picture. So I don't want to mess with the total.
Okay, and before we continue, I did want to remind you all to join our college football podcast group. You can sync your picks and use the quick pick feature on the BettingPros sports betting app to get a chance to win some free prizes. You can elevate your betting strategy and join the conversation today at bettingpros.com/college. Let's move to the 3:30 slate here, Bogman, where we have 3 top 25 matchups starting in the Big Ten with a battle in Eugene with number 1 Oregon facing off against the 20th ranked Illinois Fighting Illini. Illinois, they beat Michigan straight up last week at home 21-7 to move to 6-1 against the spread. Luke Altmaier at quarterback, though, kind of struggled in that one. Almost looked like a Michigan quarterback. He only had 19 passing attempts, only completed 9 of them for 80 yards and a tutty. Will that do against Oregon here? They just blanked Purdue 35-0 on Friday night after beating Ohio State in Week 7. Oregon has been hard to trust too this season. They're 3-3 against the spread, 3-4 to the over.
Yeah, so I think I need to be done doubting Illinois, right? I've done it too many times this year, and they have covered when I doubt them. So the number 1 ranked curse, I don't care. I don't care about that. I don't really think that's a thing. People love it, but it's nothing for me. Last week, Illinois beat Michigan convincingly. Dylan Gabriel has been outstanding, but Oregon played Boise State close, and they played some bigger games close under Dan Lanning. I think Oregon is a way better team. I'd like to catch them at something at like 17.5 or at least like under 20 in that neighborhood. This is a long travel for Illinois. We've heard about the time zones and all that stuff, but I don't. It almost feels like Oregon's coming off a bye with that Purdue game. I don't see this as a letdown spot, but I'm convinced that Illinois gets up and plays. They get up for big games and they play down. That Purdue game was kind of embarrassing to get ripped for that many rushing yards against Purdue. And then they get up and they beat the brakes off of Michigan. So I think Illinois is going to be up for this game. So I'm going to take the points. I think it's heading towards them as well. So, get it early if you're on the Illinois side. If you want Oregon, wait and see what it goes down to, because right now it seems like it's moving towards Illinois a little bit.
So no chance you think that Illinois pulls off the total upset here? They are 1,100 on the money line here.
I would not mess with that. So
okay.
I'm not going to say that it's impossible,
Yeah.
because we've seen a lot of weird stuff happen this year, but I ain't touching it.
Okay, sounds good. I'm curious to see what Terrell says because he's one of those degens. He loves sprinkling on those long money lines. So, meanwhile, in the SEC, number 15 Bama, they look to rebound after losing to Tennessee last week and dropping their third straight game against the spread. When they host number 21 Missouri at home this week, Alabama is favored by 13.5. And that seems like a lot for a team with the 46th ranked total offense and 42nd ranked total defense. Jalen Milroe has looked completely out of sync since playing against Georgia, and he's doing his very best to tank his draft stock that was going up, I felt like, after that Georgia game. We mentioned Brady Cook, who came back last week to get Missouri out of that hole against Auburn, but they still did just win by 4 and are 2-5 against the spread this season. Luther Burden, he's another guy whose draft stock continues to sink a little bit here, not really getting the production or the looks I think he deserves. But Mizzou is still 9th in total defense here. Both these teams are kind of a mess, Bogman, but are the Tigers 13.5 points more of a mess than Bama?
I don't think I want to mess with the line in this one.
Okay.
I think I like the under here because both offenses have been, like you said, Milroe's out of sync. Brady Cook did the Undertaker gif and went to the hospital and came back. Noel's a little banged up. Like, I feel like these offenses are beat up right now. I think it's interesting that the money is coming in on Missouri a little bit here. It has since switched from Missouri to Bama slightly overnight. But I think my favorite play is the under here. I think 56.5 might be a lot. Bama's given up points recently, but I think they can put a lot of pressure on Gimpy Brady Cook and keep this game a little lower scoring. So I like the under 56.5 as it stands right now. And cash and tickets are on the under pretty decently right now as well. So that number is probably going to shrink.
Okay. Yeah, I don't mind that play at all. I think that's a sharp one there from you. Let's head to Nashville, where the 25th ranked Vanderbilt Commodores host the 5th ranked Texas Longhorns. Texas is laying 17.5 points here, and they look to rebound after a game they got dominated on both lines of scrimmage against Georgia, which I think was surprising to me. I thought the offensive line, the defensive line was a strength for Texas. Quinn Ewers was pressured all day long. Texas let Trevor Etienne have the best game of his season as well. He scored 3 touchdowns in that one. We even saw Arch Manning for a few series at the end of the first half here. Vandy, meanwhile, they've rattled off 3 straight wins. They've moved to 5-2 straight up and against the spread, one of the best seasons that I can remember any Vanderbilt team ever having. They're led by that dual threat quarterback, Diego Pavia. He has 14 total touchdowns and just 1 interception this season. Can Texas get the best of him, though, after forcing Carson Beck into 3 interceptions last week?
Yeah, I think that's the issue is, Vandy's look good, and they beat teams in different ways, right? They outscored Bama. They held Kentucky to only 13. So this is a good team. This isn't a look-past team. This isn't a walkover team. But I think the line of scrimmage is going to be the difference. We're coming off Texas' worst performance. They look better in the second half, so they did make adjustments. And I think, this is probably the issue with playing a somewhat cupcake schedule going into a huge game, right? Is you don't really get tested. You don't have to open it up. You don't have to make big adjustments at halftime, and they needed to at Georgia, and by the time they did, it was too late. So I think coming into this Vanderbilt game, I don't think Vandy's going to be able to get the type of pressure that Georgia was, obviously. So I think Texas is going to be able to score. I also think that Vandy's not going to be able to stop Texas on the defensive side of the ball either. We saw them improve against that offense in the second half in Georgia, but I just think Vandy's not going to have it on either side of the line of scrimmage. I think Texas wins going away. Angry Texas team coming off a loss, the bow up, all that stuff. I like Texas big here, but I am obviously biased.
Do they stick with Ewers the rest of the season, you think?
I do. Yeah.
Okay.
I think we'll see Arch but I tell you what, all it takes is 3 bad quarters from Quinn, and they could go to Arch. And I think the next time they go to Arch in the middle of a game, that's the last time.
Okay.
So that's the last switch, unless Arch just looks miserable.
Right.
So they did that because they couldn't protect Quinn.
Right.
And Arch could get out, so they went back to Quinn, and he looked better in the second half, but not good enough still. So I think the quarterback controversy is a little overblown, but I think it's Quinn for the rest of the season.
Okay. Okay, good to know. In the primetime slate is the 6th ranked and undefeated Miami Hurricanes laying 21.5 points against the 1-6 Florida State Seminoles. Miami beat Louisville last week in a barn burner 52-45, and this is the number 1 total offense in the nation, led by Heisman hopeful Cam Ward. They are 6-0 and 1 to the over as well. Florida State, they just lost to Duke, and they are now 1-6 straight up, 0-7 against the spread. We saw both Brock Glenn and Luke Kromenhoek. We saw, I guess that's their third string quarterback who also played for the Seminoles last week. No DJU currently as well. Early on, I think taking the over in this game is my favorite play of the week, Bogman. I think Miami could put up 50 alone on just about anyone. Are you coming with me, or are you taking a side?
I'm okay taking the over, because I do think Miami puts up a ton of points. And this is a rivalry game, but this is not a throw the record books out type of rivalry game. Like Miami was up and down last year. FSU was really good. The game was close, right? But in games where one team is bad, FSU won the year before 45-3. Miami won the year before that 52-10. These teams like to embarrass each other. They just, that is their rivalry, is they like to embarrass each other. Seth, can you name me the 2 teams scoring fewer points per game than FSU?
Is Oklahoma on that list?
No, they're actually not.
I don't know. I don't
Kennesaw
know.
State and Houston.
Okay.
Those are the 2.
Checks
Also, Florida State, 118th in time of possession. FSU's not going to get better playing Miami here. I'm laying the points and taking the Canes. And if you want to take the over because you think Miami does the heavy lifting, I'm for that as well.
No chance of a letdown spot, you don't think?
I don't think so. I know they've been bad, Miami. They've not been playing their best football right now. But, you know, they're another team, kind of like Illinois we talked about earlier. They get up for a game, and they're going to get up to embarrass Florida State.
Okay, awesome. Love it. Shifting back to the Big Ten, we have the number 3 Penn State and 8 Lions on the road in Madison against the 5-2 Wisconsin Badgers. Penn State, they might be undefeated, but they're just 2-4 against the spread, despite having the 10th ranked total offense and the 6th ranked total defense. They are coming off a bye here with Ohio State on deck next week in Happy Valley for the whiteout. Meanwhile, the Badgers, they start out 0-4 against the spread. They're trying out this air raid offense to try to get it together. But over the last month in October, they have been great. 3-0 against the spread. They beat Big Ten opponents Purdue, Rutgers, and Northwestern by a combined score of 117-16. Bogman, watching Penn State blow covers my entire life, I'm opting to parlay the -220 money line with some other big, heavy favorites this weekend instead of taking the points. What say you?
Yeah, I mean, this game is more of that throw the record book out, but they don't play every year, right? They haven't played since 2021. So, and like you said, Wisconsin has been quietly impressive recently, right? They've done it with those big defensive performances in the current 3-game win streak. As you said, you gave, what was the point total again? The difference there?
117-16.
Right. And they held Purdue to 6 points, 216 yards. They held Rutgers to 7 and 271 yards. They held Northwestern to 3 and 209 yards. Penn State is coming off the bye here after that big overtime win against USC. I think Penn State is closer to Bama and USC on this Wisconsin schedule, the teams that blew them out. Penn State has hated the spread this year, obviously.
Yeah, dude.
And maybe they'll let off the gas because they have Ohio State next week. But 6.5 is not. They should be up by more than that going into the fourth. So, this could open up, and maybe you get a better number because people like Wisconsin. But it's all on Penn State now. So if you want Penn State, I would take it at this 6.5 as quickly as you can get it. So. I think your money line play is the same, obviously the much safer play.
Yeah.
But I don't mind laying 6.5 for Penn State as it stands right now.
Okay, let's go ahead and round out the program with the game that could decide a spot in the SEC championship, as number 14 Texas A&M are 3-point favorites against number 8 LSU. Funny enough, both these teams actually started with a loss, but they've now won 6 straight games coming into this one. A&M, they moved to 2-5 against the spread. They failed to cover last week against your frisky Mississippi State Bulldogs. Connor Wegman, he looked super mid in that game. I was at the bar watching that one. I was like, man, this guy is just, I don't know. I almost think they should go back. I really do.
No, I don't. They're not going to do that.
He threw 2 picks in that one, still got the W though. LSU, meanwhile, they've covered in 3 straight games to move to 3-4 ATS. That includes last week's impressive 34-10 win over Bridges, Arkansas. Razorbacks down there on the road. This is perhaps, to me, the toughest game to handicap on this entire slate because neither of these teams have an awesome defense, but A&M, they got a great rushing game, 13th in rushing offense, and LSU's passing game under Garrett Nussmeier has been great, top 10 in the nation. What happens to this 3-point line as the week progresses, Bogman?
Yeah, it's already opened up a half point towards the Aggies here. So I think people are just not buying LSU, but I kind of like LSU in this game, but I'm not trusting them on the road with how many penalties that they have, right?
Especially in College Station, dude.
Especially in College Station. Both these teams, by the way, rank post 100 in penalties per game. They're both undisciplined, sloppy teams so far this season. And I think the pass rush is going to get to Wegman. Like you said, he was tough against Mississippi State. And the Tigers have not been good in the secondary, but they have 24 sacks. I think the penalties for LSU with all that noise at College Station, as you brought up, is going to play a factor. I like the under in this game more than picking a side. Like, let the game play out and hope there's not as many points as can be scored in this game. I just think we're going to see too many pre-snap penalties from LSU, which is going to set them back, make for 3rd and longs. Yeah. I just think it's just not a good environment for LSU to play in. So I don't really like a side in this game, but I like the under here.
Yeah, I think if I am going to get invested with this game, it will probably be that under as well. But this might be one that, hey, I'm just sitting on the sideline and hopefully cashing my or counting my cash from earlier in the day.
That's right.
But that'll do it for us today on the Betting Pros College Football Show. Thank you so much for watching and tuning in with us. We will be back later in the week with Terrell for our picks and predictions episode. Until then, like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the Betting Pros YouTube channel and the podcast feed. Plus, download the Betting Pros app. For Scott Bogman, I'm Seth Woolcock. Thanks for watching. Take care, y'all.